Good evening from Vernon, British Columbia, beautiful British Columbia. At 5 minutes past 7 p.m. on February the 9th, I believe. Yes, I'm going to do this tonight because uh, this is a kind of a thing I wrote in June the 2nd, 2015, sort of a biography about my life and family and whatever. And it goes up to about 1964 or something in there for now. Anyway, this is what it was. This will be a group of short thoughts and memories beginning in June the 2nd, 2015. I am presently residing at McCulloch Court, 3400 Coldstream Avenue. That's where I was, but since a week ago I moved here to the Vernon Rest Home. Anyway, I was born in Hay Lakes, Alberta on April 22nd, 1934 on the farm of my grandfather, Amandus Johnson was the name he was given. Well, it was Johnson, Jonnson. It's the name he was given in Sweden. He immigrated to Canada in 1905. His wife died in childbirth in 1917. His family consisted of two sons, Thor, my father, and Sturry, his brother. Third son, Ernest, died in childbirth. In 1917, there was Agnes, Alma, Thora, Annie, Lily, and Myrtle, plus the two boys, which made 8. And he did that on his own. In the 1918 flu, Amandus took in 2 more girls from a neighborhood farm when the parents both died of the flu. Now the family was 10 children and he was a widower on his own, raising children. My father started farming when he was about 12 years old. He went to school for only the first 3 years. Friedefeld Edvald became the hired man when Dad was about 15 years old. This family was now 12 members. This would be approximately 1921. Jonas Amandus and Anna Aquilina and my dad actually arrived in Canada about April the 27th, 1905. They would have traveled by train from Montreal, which came by ship from Sweden, to Wetaskiwin, Alberta, and then by wagon to their homestead on 3/4 sections and the south shore of Miquelon Lake, 6 miles east of Hay Lakes, Alberta. Alberta was founded in 1905. The same year, Alberta became a province. I have always wondered how you would load a wagon that could last you for at least the next 6 months, while you built a house to survive the coming winter. There would have to have been no real roads, only trails made by the first settlers, many from the same area of Sweden, Wilhelmina. This would all have happened around the end of April 1905. From Wetaskiwin to the new homestead would have been approximately 23 miles. My grandfather was called Manny instead of Amandus. He was born in 1876 in Wilhelmina, Sweden, and left Sweden when he was 29 years old, with my dad was 1 year old. He worked as a policeman before he left for Canada. He had two sisters who had large families. He never returned to Sweden. I wondered what was the feeling about this great adventure to a country new and unknown as Canada. The thoughts of getting free land as a homestead of 480 acres must have been the incentive for a young man and his family. I've always admired the ability to handle all the things that life can throw at a man. He was always on time, every time. You could set your watch by his coming and going. The children, especially the girls, were in awe of him and did not want him to catch them smoking, etc. There was three at home when I was born, up in the northeast bedroom, upstairs. I remember watching them passing a cigarette around next to the open window, holding the cigarette with a bobby pin so there would be no stains on their fingers that Grandpa could see. They were all in their 20s at that time. Those years were great for me. I am sure my mother must have been intimidated by Dad's three sisters who still lived at home. And I remember being pampered to no end by these sisters. And they were always dressing me up and taking me out to all the neighbors all over and over again. I recall thinking that everything was so big, the machine shop, the ice house, the summer kitchen, the machine shed and garage, and all the granaries and the pump house and the barn. Thora, Dad's sister, contacted polio when she was 9 years old. But that never seemed to hold her back from doing anything. I was always riding around on the back of her wheelchair. She was my godmother, and was always so happy to see me. She died in 1968, and I was in Camrose the day that she died. I was at the house. Everyone was sitting around in the kitchen and the living room on a death watch. I went into her bedroom about 4 p.m. and sat with her, and she asked me if I could hear the music, and I said, no, I can't hear it. She said, she smiled at me and she said she could hear this music. I don't believe she weighed more than 75 pounds at the time, but she reached up and grabbed me with her left arm and hugged me to her face and held me tight for quite a while. Well, she got that. Where she got that strength from, I don't know to this day. About an hour and a half later, in 1966, oh, she died, yes, she died about an hour and a half later after that. In 1966, I wanted to start a dry cleaning plant in Rocky Mountain House, but I was short about $1,000 to make the down payment. I drove out to Camrose and I was going to ask Olga Eliasson to loan me the $1,000 to buy the dry cleaning plant. He was a rich farmer and an uncle. It turned out that he said all his money was tied up in the Alberta Wheat Pool investments, and I was not surprised, but I was very disappointed. I stayed another night at Thora's place in Camrose, and of course I told her what happened. When I was leaving in the morning, she handed me an envelope and said, you can pay it back whenever you have the money. I was totally taken back. I opened the envelope and there was the $1,000 I needed. I thanked her and I left. On the way back to Rocky Mountain House, I thought How did she happen to have $1,000 in her house just when I needed it? It was her sewing money. I did not know that was the kind of, I did not know, but that was the kind of lady she was. A crippled woman in a wheelchair who did many things for others, not just me. August the 28th, 2015. In 1940 to 1950 and on to 1965. I started school in Armina in 1941, skipped to grade 3 in 1942, and moved to Brandland School area in 1946. Went to Brandland School a quarter of a mile north of our house till 1947. Then back to Armina for grade 9. Dad bought the Vasa Lodge Hall at Miquelon Lake about 6.5 miles away and moved it to our farm. One part was the house, one part was the barn, and the lean-to at the base of the hall was the chicken coop. It became our temporary home for over a year, and later it became a chicken coop again. I finished grade 9 in Armina, and I remember the school superintendent from Camrose drove out to our farm around the beginning of August in 1949 in a big blue sedan right out in the field where I was raking hay. And he was there to talk to me about coming back to school. I had always had, very high marks, mostly H's and A's, and after he left, I thought, boy, I must really be a smart guy for him to come out and to see me. I think he convinced me that I was so smart I didn't need to go to school anymore. So I don't move. Oh, so I didn't. Smart move, eh? Got the car the next year, 1931 Chevy for a four-door sedan. Dad had given me a heifer the year before, and I was able to trade it to Oscar Erga, his name was, he was another farmer, for the car. So I had a car. It was 1950. I was 16 years old, and I had it made. A lot of things happened in the next few years. I was home for a while helping out on the farm. I remember we were loading pigs and weighing them on time when I was handling the big scale, and it was swinging around, and it hit my dad in the head and knocked him down to his knees. And he said, "Are you trying to kill me?" We were getting firewood for winter and chopping down dead trees when I managed to bring one down on Dad's head again. I dropped him to his knees, and we had to go back to the house with his head bleeding. He looked at me and shook his head. Then the pump in the well started to act up. Dad rigged up a tripod of ropes and pulleys, and we progressed to pull the pump out of the well. We got it up to about 18 feet, and the slip hook we were using to do it gave way and failed, and the pump came crashing down. Dad automatically grabbed the pump to stop it, but it slammed down all the way down till it hit, and his ring finger on his right hand was cut off about 1.5 inches on his finger. I helped him to the house. He was bleeding, not just about, and just about passing out several times. After Mom got him bandaged up and got him clean overalls on, I drove him to the Smith Clinic in Camrose, Alberta. And Dr. Mac Smith sewed him up, and we were home by 5:30 p.m. The house was full of people. When we got home, all of them wanted to know what happened. I wandered down to the well, and checking around, I found the end of his finger, and into my pocket it went. Back at the house, they were asking Dad questions, and when did when did this happen, and were you able to find the end of your finger, and I said, you mean this? And I held up his bloody piece of finger, and Mom started to scream at me, and Dad fainted, and I ran out of the house laughing. She finally got a hold of and caught me, but I had fun while it lasted. About that time, I was required to stay home and clean the barn while everyone else went to Camrose. Dad said, don't pull the manure sled too close to the slough, or, it would get stuck. Yeah. So I got the manure loaded, and I hooked it up to our little Alice Chalmers tractor, and I didn't think it was that close, but I slid into that slough with the AC tractor, but I was not stumped. I finally got the old Hartbar tractor going, but I had to get it close to the water tank because it took a lot of water. The tank was the side of the tank, the water tank, I got a little too close to it, and I pushed the side of the water tank in, and all the water ran out of the tank. But I got enough to fill up enough of the radiator on this big old Hartbar. I mean, it took like 15 or 20 gallons. But I got it, and my plan was to go through the bush behind the house on the other side of the slough, and pull the AC out with a long cable I had behind me. Going around and through the house and between the big trees was very tricky, because the steering on the Hartbar was like a turn and a half play, and I kind of got too close to a big tree and broke the right front axle of the Hartbar. Plum. The AC was in the slough, the water tank was smashed, and the Hartbar was behind the house with a broken axle. And I was sitting in the kitchen waiting at 3:30 p.m. when they came home from Camrose. Dad didn't come in. He walked around outside, looked at everything. He saw that the Hartbar was not home, not there. He walked around and he saw all the damage I had done. And he started walking in circles, and he threw his hat up in the air. He never said anything to me about this, never. All this happened when you are about 14 and lazy. Tony, the great horse Tony. I got my first horse when I was about 6 years old. Dad bought it in Hay Lakes when they brought a bunch of them in by train. And he lived 27 years. I used to harness them up every Sunday, you know, when I was about 8 years old or something like that, and into a buggy and go to church. I was the only one who went to church. The only one. Nobody else went, just me. I had to go. Go figure. We farmed with horses until 1950, when we moved to Brandland area, about 6 miles north of where we were. Dad bought it with no buildings on it. I remember I was in charge of our cattle drive to the new farm, keeping them all on the road and out of everybody's driveway. It was pretty hard, but we made it. I was glad when we got to our new home on section 5. In Swedish they said hemma på femma, home on 5. Growing up on the farm was a great life for me. I had my horse, my dog, my guns, my car, and freedom, and what more could you want? I was surrounded by aunts, uncles, and cousins. I felt blessed for some reason. I was confirmed in the Lutheran church when I was about 13, along with 7 other boys. The church was an important part of my life growing up. And that's the end of it to there. So that goes into that portion, and that'd be in the late 50s. Or no, early 50s. Very early 50s. 50 maybe, 1951. So, enough of that. I'm going to write some more later. That takes me up to about that time. But that's not all of my life. That's all. But anyway, if you find that interesting, let me know. Thank you. God bless you, and goodbye.